Today's Tuesday, July 31st. It's new hardware day, probably.
Probably. Not like we're recording this before that day. It was a weird week for news this week. There was a huge amount of security news. Just a massive amount. I guess most of it's bad. And the government news was huge, but there wasn't a lot of it. Not a lot of selection. Also, the social media news, which I'm sure some of you have heard a lot about. So that's what we're doing today. We're doing government and social media.
I was noticing that the trend, I was thinking about like the years of doing the news, and I've noticed that the trend is like more and more officials that are not normally in technology are getting clued into technology. And it's looking like 4 or 5 people that didn't previously know about technology that are getting into technology are just straight up looking for how to abuse the common citizen with technology.
Well, there is that one senator. I can't remember his name. Who is the guy? He's in like 3 of these stories.
Ron Wyden?
Yeah, Wyden. He is just like constantly, every little thing is like, get rid of Flash. We got to switch to this. Stop doing this. And he's just constantly writing letters. So
he's the one that's been red-pilled, but I mean, he's red-pilled for the force of good. He's like the 1 out of 4 that...
Yeah. He seems... Well, you can't discount that he's just doing it for political motivation. But that's like friend of my friend maybe kind of thing where it's okay, we'll take it.
3 out of the 4 senators are saying, how can we exploit Flash on the government desktops to spy on people and take over and like give myself more power?
Well, one politician that we can be damn sure is not in the same column as Wyden is Ajit Pai.
Ajit Pai and Wyden are actually clashing in this article, which is great. So, like, why is Ajit Pai in the news yet again? Is it net neutrality? Is it, some shady something? Well, it's exciting.
Yeah, so Securus. If you don't remember Securus was kind of the Cambridge Analytica that came after Cambridge Analytica. It wasn't as bad, but it was the same kind of thing. Well, it turns out Ajit Pai did some law work for them prior to his chairmanship. And so that would be a conflict of interest, right? So he should recuse himself from that investigation. He says no.
He says no in the same sense that it's like, I'm not crazy, and I know that I'm not crazy because I was certified as not crazy.
So, yeah, a couple of people, including Wyden, have pointed it out, and they're like, you should not investigate this. You shouldn't be a part of this. And he's just like, no, it's fine.
He did say that he talked to the FCC general counsel about it, and that guy said that he's probably okay to work on this. But, I mean, I don't know. It still seems like when you're in a public office, you would think that, I don't know. It just...
And why not? Wouldn't that be easier on you? It's like, hey, yeah, I'll take a week with a lighter load. Yeah, let somebody else deal with this. But he wants to, and why would you want to?
Unless you want to steer it some way or manipulate the process. It's so transparent. Like if an ordinary citizen were attempting this, I think that it would probably be a situation where like they were brought up on charges later or something.
Well, yeah. Or if a judge did it, think about if a judge did that. If a judge had been practicing privately for Securus, then became a judge, and then that was their case, no way could that go on.
Now, the other thing that Ajit Pai is really hoping goes away soon are all those pesky questions into that DDoS attack where it's like, our fine public commenting system was targeted and overtaken by miscreant hacker kids and their dog, too.
And basing that on the fact that it happened under Wheeler's watch as well, which Wheeler has publicly said that never happened.
I like how it's like retroactive. It's like, we're going to spin it this way now that we're in charge. But the other people that were in charge the other way are spinning events the other way. I mean, how is that not 1984? How are we trying to retroactively rewrite the past? It's so dishonest.
Well, what else can you do? I mean, if that comes to light, how embarrassing is that going to be? And there's going to be legal implications, right?
I think he's so, like, he is not capable of embarrassment. Embarrassment implies some things that he's
human emotion.
Yeah, so I just...
But yeah, he's using this whole... The excuse now is, I need to get a letter from the Oversight Committee, which is all Republicans, that says it's okay for me to talk to you about this. But this is the other Senate committee that he's talking to. So he's like, I can't tell Senate Committee B anything unless Senate Committee A tells me that I'm allowed to tell them that, which
That seems very disingenuous.
they should be, as far as rank, they should be on the same level, right? So why would you need permission? And he knows that letter is not coming because that's the Republican team, and they're happy to keep all this a secret.
That should be a felony. It's like wasting taxpayer resources to that extent. It's just so like if your argument is so disingenuous that you're just blatantly wasting taxpayer dollars on this procedural nonsense, that's a felony.
Well, and then the freedom of information, they're all backed up. They haven't answered one since like last year sometime.
Yeah.
And anything they do give people, they black it all out. You basically just get, black lines on paper. And so
It seems like democracy is working great.
well, it's working great for him. So, a lot of people would say as designed. So here we are. I don't think we're ever going to we've gotten to the bottom of it, I think, technically.
Yeah.
Most people who are interested in this kind of thing, they know what happened, which is people didn't like getting rid of net neutrality, and they spoke out. And it was the herd. It was the John Oliver thing. People were like, "What?" But there was no hacking.
The IT guy who had previously said there was actually hacking decided that for himself just because of the volume of traffic. And so there's really, if you haven't read that, you should go read that, because the IT guy was basically caught red-handed manipulating things.
And they've also said that they're going to fix it, but they're seeking a new budget, which they have to get so many hundreds of thousands of dollars to install a CAPTCHA. So good news. Maybe sometime in 2022 we'll get that. Whatever Pies. How long is he in for? How long does that position last?
Even the CAPTCHA thing is disingenuous, because in order to use the API, you have to apply for a key. So, if Level 1 were to build some kind of interface for this for submitting comments, and then our system ends up being abused, those comments are going to be associated with our key. It would be easy to fix that.
Well, I think he's just saying add a CAPTCHA at all. Like he's acting like it's going to take a literal act of Congress to install a CAPTCHA on the FCC website.
Felonious wasting of taxpayer dollars.
Well, the EU, it's been a busy week for the EU. They are handing out fines like candy over there. And first on the chopping block is Asus, Denon and Marantz, Philips, and Pioneer.
So this is because of price collusion in the consumer electronics industry. This is like the consumer electronics division of Asus and these other companies, not computer components, at least not yet.
Well, laptops was one of them. I think Asus was in it for laptops.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is just, they were telling online retailers, hey, do not sell for less than this price or we won't do business with you, which is quite illegal under the EU rules, and probably here too, I would imagine.
Was that wrong? Should we not have done that?
So 130 million, actually, none of them paid 130 million, because as soon as you cooperate, as soon as you agree to the extortion, they cut it in half. So most of these guys were paying 60.
I think they're still complaining about it, though. They expected it to be reduced even more because they cooperated.
So yeah, slap on the wrist. They probably covered at least that much by cheating, maybe more. So as often with the big banks, they make more money cheating than they do paying the fine. So why would they ever stop paying the fine? And this story, this kind of blew my mind, because we've seen this percolating. It's been a slow build. The New York Attorney General has gone to war with the ISPs. And you kind of get the impression that there was a closed door meeting somewhere and they were like, listen, we're going to do what we want. There's nothing you can do about it. And he was like, hold my beer.
It sure looks that way. The New York State Commission thingy has ordered a charter out of the state and says that it must sell its Time Warner cable system.
And this
60 days to get out.
They say they're going to appeal it, but it kind of sounds like there's nowhere to go from here. This is happening, which is shocking. You wouldn't think it would, but yeah, they're saying sell off all your assets, you're out. You're done.
No, it's going to go one of two ways. One, Charter or Spectrum, whoever is going to lean on their political connections, and they're going to make all this go away politically. And it's going to be something that we report on the Level 1 News is the most amazing and blatant story of corruption. And it's wow, just look at how deep this rabbit hole goes. That's option number one for how it goes. Option number two is that they're literally going to sabotage their own infrastructure and make all of the people that are currently subscribing to them suffer horribly as much as possible in order to try to discredit the politicians.
So you're wondering how can you just throw out an entire ISP? What do they have to do? What sort of horrible sin do they commit to get thrown out? And they lay it out here. It's repeated failures to meet deadlines, and that has to do with rolling out service. Skirt obligations for rural communities. If you're in the sticks, they will not give you service. Can confirm, Time Warner real bad about that. Unsafe practices. I'm not sure exactly what that points to. I think it's like the high-rise buildings.
They also got in trouble in New York for running their lines too close to high voltage lines.
And so the failure to commit to the terms of the merger. So they merged and they were like, hey, if you let us merge, we're going to do all these great things and it's going to be sunshine and roses for everybody. They didn't do any of it. And then the purposeful obfuscation of its performance. So that's basically them being like, all those promises we made, here's what we did. And then you look just 2 pages in and you're like, this is all just stuff that was already there. You didn't do anything new.
Yeah.
And so
this is all of this stuff is stuff that we of the Level 1 News have reported on ad infinitum. And it is nice to be vindicated that there are people that agree with us. This is not political. Like, this is going to be framed as like some kind of a political thing, but when New York is one of our most wealthy and advanced states, and New York City is a monument to civilization and mankind, as terrible and as great as it is. And the ISP situation all over New York is so bad. It's like third world country bad. It's like Australia bad.
I don't know if I can go that far. Well, I meant to put the 2 UK stories together and I screwed up and I put that New York story in the middle. What a terrible faux pas. But let's switch gears. We'll go back to UK and we'll talk about another big thing that they've handed down. And they're saying, we got to get tough on fake news.
I'm really surprised that this is coming from fake news and not copyright law. What's going to happen as soon as the copyright lobby realizes what's going on here? The copyright lobby is going to jump on this and be like, "Yeah, man, that fake news. The fake news is terrible. It's crushing humanity. We got to do something about it because it will be made. Those mechanisms will be made into copyright control."
So what they're talking about is Facebook is the example that they use, but it would affect everybody. If you are disseminating fake news, then the government should step in and make liable. I don't know what make liable means. Maybe you can be sued. Maybe there are fines built into it. No one knows exactly what that means. But this brings up, when you talk about fake news, the inevitable question. I mean, if you think through it just a little bit, the inevitable question is, who decides? And I think what the EU or the UK, actually UK, not the EU, UK lawmakers are saying is, we decide. And that's terrifying. If you're not terrified of that, then you need to look more into it.
Think about, there are reports going back to the 1980s, if you really want to go that far back. But there are credible reports there was a bunch of leaks in 1998 about this massive spying apparatus between the NSA and the GCHQ and just all this stuff. And there was no real super credible evidence, but there were some reports and some rumors and some, Alex Jones type stuff in the late 90s. And that was all considered fake.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of, things that the government has done that even I would have considered fake. It's like, there's no way. And we've kind of been desensitized to it, if you think about it. But as we've gone along, they all get proven true and people just kind of, they move on. They forget about it. But let's think about how bad, another story coming up, but this is the anniversary of Cambridge Analytica.
Oh, yeah.
Which is crazy, right? That was a year ago.
Yeah. Nothing's
happened.
And Equifax.
And we just forget. Oh, yeah. It's not Cambridge Analytica. It's Equifax, yeah. The one that started it all.
That's a great lead in for our next story, which is the UK snooping investigation, just like what I was talking about. It's unlawful for more than a decade. Literally, this is fake news.
A lot of people would consider this fake news. So when you read into this, it's not that they're saying they're not allowed to do it. But what they're saying is there was an infrastructure set up. There was a way this was supposed to work. So you're supposed to get permission, and then you're supposed to go to the ISP or whoever you're dealing with, the wireless carrier, and you show them the document that says this is what we're allowed to look at. But the way it was done is you got permission or not, and you went to the ISP and you were like, I am the law. And you got whatever you wanted. They hadn't been showing them any sort of scope or proof or whatever. And the ISPs were like, all right, here you go. You're in charge, right? So they were just doing it wrong. But it's important to note that they're not going to stop doing it.
I'm not sure about the UK specifically, but I do know that specifically with AT&T in Atlanta here in the US, it was exactly the same kind of arrangement. And the way that they met their obligations for law enforcement was to just provide law enforcement a direct shunt into the main AT&T network for all telecommunications, long distance, email, internet, leased lines, which are lines that are not even supposed to be on the internet that were point to point that happened to be running through the data center. All of that traveled through the trunk. And AT&T didn't have any oversight as to what was being looked at or not. It was just a big pipe going into an office, a government office somewhere where they could look at whatever they wanted.
I don't think it was quite that bad here, but it was the case where just whatever they asked for, they were given. So, and it should have been that they were given the warrant itself, or however they do it over there. And the ISP would be like, okay, I'm reading this document, and here's what it says to give you, and I'm going to give it to you. But they never did it like that. So
you guys in Europe should probably look into this a little bit more to know how you've been wronged. I wonder if that's eligible for like tort damages or something like that. Like, can you... Now that the damages are shown, like, can you recover anything monetarily?
No, because there's that. I mean, I don't know. We have that law where you can't sue the state apparatus. So.
We did horrible, horrible things, but apparently it's okay for war crimes, though. Like, if you're on the losing side, you've got reparations and all that.
But that would be another country. A citizen cannot sue the government, but another country, I suppose, could do like an international court. That'd be a different thing. Well, the MPAA, you don't hear as much about them these days, and I wonder if that bothers them. I bet they missed the spotlight.
No, they're scheming in the background. They're like cockroaches. Just because you might have thought you got them under the control, but they're still breeding in the wall, I assure you.
Each of them lays thousands of eggs per mating, so you never really get rid of them. Well, this is, I'm sure if they get their way here, it's going to apply to everything, but they're pretty much talking about the whole Kodi streaming boxes type of deal.
Yeah.
And in their opinion, that's a criminal act.
Yes. Well, it's funny. I debated on whether or not to share this. So I have Kodi at home, but I don't use the streaming part of it. I have my media collection that I've gathered over the years by capturing stuff from television and editing the commercials out. I even have some scripts for automatically detecting and removing commercials. That's how I built my Star Trek collection. And it's okay. It's not perfect quality, but for most of the runs of Star Trek that I care about, it's basically okay. But in their minds, I'm sure that's piracy.
Do you have Discovery in that collection?
No. There's no Discovery in that.
Yeah, so they're saying if you are operating one of these sites, and here was the scary part, if you author a plugin that accesses them. So just by building a plugin, you don't sell it to anybody, you don't actually build the hardware, you don't ever offer any copyright material, but just by building a plugin that could access them, you become criminally liable if they get their way.
It seems like a bit of a stretch.
A little scary.
A plugin for accessing YouTube because people uploaded pirated material to YouTube, does that count? I mean, that seems like that would count in this definition.
Yeah, absolutely it would. And they'd take you to court whether it counted or not, and then you got to get it in front of a judge who you hope understands that discrepancy.
This is like the VCR. Like the VCR almost wasn't. It was like the copyright lobby didn't want VCRs, and it went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and it was one of those 5-4 things where different people being in, like, we wouldn't have VCRs. This is like that.
Well, we talked about Senator Wyden, and so many stories about him this week. And one of them, again, he is championing for the side of good. He is down with Flash, is what he's saying. Government computers should not have Flash.
That's just good computer hygiene. I mean, this should have already been the thing.
Yeah, so he wants all federal websites to exclude Flash by next year or happens next year. And then in the 20s sometime, get Flash uninstalled from all computers and make sure that it's, never gets near them again.
The interesting thing with Flash on government computers is that a lot of the time government computers are so old, they're running they'll only run Internet Explorer from like 20 years ago. And so it's really hard to build modern applications not with Flash because they just won't update.
Well, but I mean, when you're talking about when people are ringing this Russia bell every day, can you make that argument? Isn't security more important no matter what?
Yeah.
I mean, make them use a command line.
It was long overdue. Maybe Microsoft is going to be like, all right, we're going to upgrade the entire U.S. government to Windows 10.
Yeah, for $1 billion.
Probably like $40 billion.
Well, and some more, I suppose this is more good news. There's a lot of, again, I'm so jaded when it comes to government. It's like, are they just doing this for the headline or do they mean well? But two big stories out of Massachusetts. And this one's interesting. So they've looked at Ajit Pai, he entered those rules where it was like, we're getting rid of net neutrality. And by the way, you're not allowed to ever try to get it back. Like that's pretty much the thing that he passed. So they're saying, okay, we won't try to get it back, but we're going to shame you if you don't give it to us.
Again, for this to work, they have to feel shame.
That's true. That's an excellent point. But what they're doing is they're setting up a sort of a registry for ISPs, and you can go on the bad list. It's like the Santa Claus of ISPs.
Remind me again what ISPs have the worst customer service in history. Oh, yeah, it doesn't matter.
The biggest and most popular ones. That's who. So, I don't think it's going to be super effective. I suppose, and, the way they're touting it is from a consumer standpoint, you can look them up and say, oh, I don't want to do business with this one that's on the bad list. But who has a choice? Yeah. There's usually one good option.
It's like the mafia. It's like, I'll just deal with this other mafia.
Yeah. If you have that choice, because usually they don't operate in the same area because they know that that'll lead to violence. So, what are you going to do? And number 2 from Massachusetts, they are getting into the right to repair fight. Kinda.
They want to study. They're commissioning a study.
I mean, it's a 6-month study. You talk about the slow wheels of government. This is certainly that. But it's a baby step, I suppose.
Is this necessary because of all the fake news? It's like, oh gosh, there's just so much fake news around right to repair. We're going to have to commission our own academic study.
I suppose, yeah. Or this gives them the chance to fill the board up with industry people. So they can be like, well, we did this study and it seemed like it was fine. There's no need for a right to repair. Everybody's happy. And so in the theme of
everybody's happy except for people in Alaska.
Well, state government. So Alaska was one of those states who was very net neutrality friendly.
Because it's very rural.
For a while. Yeah. And you get the idea that in Alaska, have those tiny little towns and the Congress people have to eat breakfast down at the diner. So they actually have to deal with the constituents. And so this guy actually had a meeting. Some woman who runs a website in Alaska, she was like, we need to talk about this. And she sort of explained it to him. And he was like, well, I don't see why anybody would vote against that. We need that. And then a couple of months later, completely turned around 180.
Yeah.
With no explanation.
There's so much money involved in that. It's just, it's nuts.
So the Alaskans are up in arms. He's turned on them. His excuse is he doesn't want to support at the state level because he believes an act of Congress is the only way to deal with it. But I don't see how you can't have both, right? I mean,
start small and go from there.
Yeah.
Just put a thing, like the first sentence of your state bill can be like, this is superseded by anything that happens at the federal level.
Well, it would be anyway. You can't really just opt out.
States' rights.
They've been gone for years. So yeah, Alaska, you thought they were okay, but then they turned on you. Gosh, imagine if Ron Wyden turns on us one day. It'd be like pro wrestling.
He's holding out for the big money.
Catch us all by surprise. The heel turn. Well, here's another story about turning bad after you've gone to the light, being poisoned again. Is Germany.
They're going to switch over to Windows from Linux. About 13,000 workstations running OpenSUSE will be migrated to a current version of Windows. No!
So the excuse they give here is that some of the other people and other, like not directly for the government, but working on other things are using Windows. And they might be using the same applications. So they don't want extra development fees for doing both. But and they mentioned some of the other German states and even, other places in the EU, they were doing just fine with it. And actually some were moving toward more open source. So it certainly seems like some money might have changed hands here.
They could probably do whatever they need to do with Windows applications for the Linux users via like VDI, virtual desktop infrastructure or something like that. But
but you're talking about, like we talked about last week, Barb from accounting, the one that's always getting fished. What's the German version of Barb? So I don't think you can expect much from them. I wonder, one of these places had their own, it was Berlin, I think, had their own version of Linux.
Oh, yeah.
And I imagine that was to build a desktop environment that was easy enough for...
Yeah. Well, you see that kind of stuff with Windows as well. I mean, you don't just install Windows on 13,000 machines. You set up group policy and probably a central Windows image and probably network booting and do it all that way because nobody wants to install Windows on 13,000 machines, just like nobody wants to install Linux on 13,000 machines. So it might have just been a reporter not understanding. I guarantee you that there will be a customized version of Linux or Windows for those 13,000 machines. It's not going to be vanilla Windows 10.
We'll see, I guess. Actually, we probably won't hear anything more about that.
It could also be a negotiation thing because it's like we want a better deal on our licenses over here, so we're thinking about switching. And then Microsoft's like, all right, we'll just charge you $1 per machine. And
no, it was so Merkel didn't do well in that last election. She had to form a coalition, and this was one of the concessions for the coalition is we switch back to Windows. So that really points to somebody
that is definitely political.
They bring up in that article, they point out a good thing. It's like when let's say you're going to do road repairs and you need a fleet of trucks. No one says go get me a fleet of BMWs. They say we need a fleet of trucks. Go get offers. But this was, we must have Windows. So,
that Microsoft wanted to cooperate with. They got this open source initiative. What's going on?
Now, we talked about this story. It's been, I think it was last year sometime, right?
I think it was just been, we covered it originally last year, but there was an update on this a few years ago, and it was like, I don't think this legal maneuvering is going to work. Turns out it didn't.
Well, thankfully it didn't. And this is kind of convoluted, so let me try to run through it very quickly. Patent trolls. When patent trolls are coming after you and they're like, we own this patent, you better settle. You can call for a review, a patent review. And you get together a team of people in the industry and some government people, and they look at, is
this a patent troll?
Yeah. Is there any validity to this? And
that process is not possible if it's an international patent.
Well, no, this has to do with, so like we were talking about before, you have to sue to start that process. An individual cannot sue a sovereign, which would be like, if I wanted to sue Kentucky for a patent troll, I'm not allowed to do that. Well, it turns out Native American entities, states, whatever, I don't know what they call them, they have that same protection.
So, like as if they're sovereign nations. Exactly.
So you can't, if they own these patents, then you can't do that with them. So was it GlaxoSmithKline? One of these drug companies was patent trolling or something. And so what they did is they moved all of their patents over to the Native American tribe.
To try to avoid the patent troll review.
And you're like, you can't sue us because we're Native American.
Well, that failed.
Yes, it failed. And it turns out some other people had done the same thing with that same tribe. They were apparently known for that. And so here's one for the good guys.
So we'll see how this actually turns out once the patent is reviewed. It'll probably be dropped.
Great deal for the Native Americans, though. They didn't have to do anything. And they got $1 million a year as long as they protected those patents per patent.
Nice.
That's good money. Well, here's one that I don't know. What do you think about this? Do you think this is, I think this is horrific government waste.
At first, I was really offended by this, but then I thought about the amazing Level1 digital mercenary series that you should all just stop and go watch right now, because that content is evergreen. It will survive the test of time.
Let's be fair. That cost you nothing. The taxpayers did not put any money into that.
That's true.
But they did put $150,000 into this. Now, let me give you argument number 2 that has to do with that. Level 1 Digital Mercenary Series was created by people who have business experience. This was created by the government, who, by definition, is the antithesis of business experience.
They're going to exist, success or failure, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The idea was that the government would create a video game to teach entrepreneurial skills to the new generation. And the connection to the Digital Mercenary series, I feel like we're a little bit like Johnny Carson. It's like we're doing the thing, and then we open the envelope, and it's like, here's the connection. The Digital Mercenary series and the government thing is, the government sort of sees the coming service economy. Like, corporations are going to be Google sized, or they're going to be like 5 people in the future, probably. And a lot of freelancing, a lot like the Amazon truck drivers, where it's like you're going to work endless hours for peanuts chasing that carrot because, you own the company or whatever. That's what our future economy looks like, unless something changes dramatically to shift the balance of power back into the hands of the citizenry. And so as individual citizens, they need a better ability to do business management and that kind of thing. And so the government's like, well, we can solve this by spending $150,000 on video games to teach people how to run a simulated restaurant with Restaurant Tycoon. I'm not sure that's the best way to solve that, but that's what they had in mind.
But also, we don't know that it was 150. We know it was at least 150.
Oh, yeah.
Because other agencies could have been involved. But the other thing about it is they talked about the things that would teach you, and you'd expect it to be here's how you do payroll, and here's how you manage hours, and here's how you do inventory. But it was a lot. They had moved up to more importance, things like, managing your crazy employees and, workplace diversity and stuff like that. So I think in a way they're trying to teach them how to navigate the minefield that is the small business right now in the SJW age.
If anything, managing the forum has taught me, it's like, let's get some productivity about the island of broken toys. I love you all.
Can you imagine the forum running as a business? You just wrap it up, just liquidate, because it's never going to work.
It's like, no, Bob, this is what we're working on this week. We're not talking about that because there's no it's just a tar pit. Just talking about that just makes everybody angry.
Well, moving into the social media series of stories, we had 2 huge social media stories this week, and I think actually this wasn't the first one, but this was a big one. The Twitter conference call.
The stock has plunged 21%. They've purged so many accounts. So many accounts.
Yeah, and it turns out the robots trading on Wall Street, and I mean both robotic human beings and actual AI, did not care for the numbers that they put up in that earnings call, and they began to sell savagely. 21%, that's a lot of money. That's an insane amount of money. They were lower than expected engagement per day, lower than expected users because they just deleted half of them, and lower than expected earnings as well, I believe. So not looking good for Twitter.
I wonder who's going to buy them.
That's a good question. And how do you make Twitter, how do you monetize it? Because do you see growth in Twitter's future ever again?
I don't think you can monetize. I think the only way to monetize it would be to dramatically cut the cost of operation to 4 guys and just everything else is automation.
But they're doing the opposite, because the other part of this conference call was the quote unquote health. And we got a story about that later. But the health thing is meaning we have to scrutinize everything so that no one gets offended. And the only way you can do that is either develop incredible AI, which we don't have, and I don't think that's realistic, or just hire a bunch of blue-haired people to do it. And I think they're going with a latter. So
the literal entire population are the pearl clutchers. Oh, land sakes! Oh, I can't.
Well, they would never wear pearls because that's an animal product.
Twitter, they have Periscope for video conferencing, and they're part of the action here. They're going to suspend repeatedly abusive Periscope commenters.
Yeah, so Periscope, you go live, and it's always a live situation. So the comments are there, they're live. And it turns out they've got this weird way of dealing with it. It was where you can like summon a committee immediately, and people can vote on whether a comment is toxic, but it doesn't follow you. You don't have like a reputation of toxicity. So they're going to change it so that when you, like, if you get the Council of Toxicity votes you down once or twice, then you're going to get that reputation and you might get suspended for your toxic comments.
That sounds amazing and also horrible.
Yeah, I'm not a Periscope user. I don't know how bad it can be, but I imagine, you're immediate. It's kind of like Twitch.
Yeah.
You can give that immediate feedback. You've got a pretty good idea they're going to read it, and people really like to troll that.
It's going to be amazing watching that system flounder with Alex Jones type people.
Oh, well, that's another big story. Foreshadowing. And so this is, more of what we talked about in the other one. Maybe this should have come first, but this is just them saying they're all bots and fake accounts, and we got to clean them up.
143,000 developer apps were suspended last quarter. That's apps. That's not people. That's apps. And this is mainly to do with GDPR compliance and, just making it easier to get a hold of, like the rules for the Twitter developer program have changed a bit, but they didn't necessarily follow up on getting everybody to opt into the new rules.
I think one of our apps might have been caught by that. Not a Level 1 app, but one that we deal with for somebody else in our professional world.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's like, this looks like a bot. It's like, no, it's just terrible.
I think it's kind of against the rules, but it's one of those situations where they're like, this is probably against the rules. We're going to do it because you're paying us. And I think Twitter might have finally caught on to that. Oh. So they've also been accused, and I think they actually did admit later that this was true. They're being a little skewed.
The Council of Toxicity caught up Trump Jr. and the Republicans. That's what you're saying, right? Because the Vice News headline is, Twitter appears to have fixed the shadow ban of prominent Republicans like the RNC and Trump's Jr. spokesperson. So literally that, Council of Toxicity saw these accounts and shadow banned them so that nobody would see their tweets or what they were doing.
Well, that's certainly how Vice is spinning it. Vice is very lefty. So they constantly go back to the idea that they weren't banned because of the things that they said or who they were or where they were on the political spectrum, but because of the things that they were saying. I think a lot of people pointed out that some of them weren't really saying anything inflammatory. They were just like, campaigning and so forth.
So what you're saying is the blue hairs that are employed to police this are naturally going to bring their own biases into things.
Well, that's been proven time and time again.
That seems obvious.
I think it was worse than that. It was not a level where it was like individual flaggings. They had removed them from one of the drop downs. There was a total shadow ban. And so that had to be a decision on a programming level.
Yeah. I think that in order for the Blue Hair Committee to do its job, who said it is going to have to be anonymized. Like, you're just not going to have an option not to. You're going to have to give them the context of the conversation, I guess, because, one reply might seem inflammatory until you look at the context of the rest of the conversation. But if you can see who it is, you're naturally, especially for famous accounts, you're naturally going to get that that thing.
I think a lot of it was probably based on immigration, for example. So you're never going to be able to hide what that is.
True.
They did undo it after they caught some flack, but it just goes to show you that, your favorite sources can be very politicized.
If we can't do it with this, how are we supposed to do it with fake news, which is even harder?
Yeah, exactly.
or with Alex Jones and InfoWars.
As foreshadowed, Alex Jones. So Facebook, and I believe the next story will be Twitter, but Twitter did follow up. Facebook's given him a 30-day timeout. They've sent him to the corner. When I read this story, his YouTube account was down also completely. Like, if you went there, you just couldn't get there. Oh, it was YouTube, not Twitter. You're right, yeah. So YouTube followed up. Now, they claim that individual videos, I don't know what the videos were about because they're gone. But they're saying now that, he's on very thin ice. He can come back in 30 days.
His YouTube channel is back now. But very briefly, it was gone.
I think they gave him another strike. So he's on 2.
Yeah. And Facebook he's out for 30 days on Facebook's platform. But yeah.
So this shouldn't surprise anybody. Alex Jones, I think it's pretty obvious that, and even, how we always talk about listen to the earnings call.
Yeah.
Because that's when the reality comes out and they stop the bullshit. And if you look at Alex Jones' divorce case, he totally says, it's a character. I'm playing a part. I'm entertaining people. Don't take my son away from me. You know, like that's his argument. So,
because the wife was like, you're a crazy person.
Exactly.
Wow.
So it's clear if you read between the lines. I think, I don't know. I felt like people who think Alex Jones is totally real it's kind of like believing that pro wrestling is totally real.
You're saying it's not? What?
But that's not to say that there aren't some nuggets of truth, because that is the most effective way to do that kind of thing. You mix in some truth and then the crazy stuff, and people are like, well, he was right about that. But yeah, I don't think Alex Jones should be silenced, but I think people should be smart enough not to buy into it totally.
Seems like that's fixing our education system and making the population smarter as a goal rather than control.
Tough thing to do, but we talk about Detroit where they just showed them Frozen over and over. It's like, well, maybe we could start here. Here's the first step I see we could do.
Alex Jones's Exhibit A in like dealing with online media in a high school. That would be I would like to go to that high school. That would be really exciting.
So we talked about earlier, the Twitter earnings call. Well, Facebook had their own. Facebook was a lower percentage, but I think at the worst they were down like almost $150 billion.
Yeah.
Crazy amount. And it's the same reason the numbers were not good. People are just, they're not using Facebook like they used to. And the whole Cambridge Analytica and Securus and all that, it hurt them pretty bad. And it's finally catching up with them.
They're still growing, just not as fast, and that's starting to spook people. It's a little bit like maybe a canary in the coal mine situation where maybe the canary was just coughing and there's not actually anything wrong with the canary, but everybody was expecting the canary to cough, so they're fleeing.
It's developing a loose stool.
so everybody is freaking out. It may be nothing. It could be colon cancer, but it may be nothing.
Well, you also, if you look like the Twitter story, they were up something like 80% this year.
Yeah.
So this often in investing in the stock market, you get a big meteoric rise and then a big pullback as well. But 80% versus 21%, that's healthy maybe. But of course it makes headlines. And we love to hate on the social media, right? Because everybody, it's like you can feel good. The Schadenfreude of, I'm sure I pronounced that incorrectly, but yeah. And of course, immediately, based on this,
we need to fire Zuckerberg.
Now, when it says shareholders, it means very specifically some of these guys who are activist investors. And they've been trying to get rid of Zuckerberg for a very long time. Specifically, they don't want him to be both chairman and CEO.
So any opportunity that presents itself, they're trying to get him out.
Now, he has the preferred stock, the Class B stock. So he actually has more power because of that, even without the percentages. So he can stop this, and he has in the past. But this time I think they might have gotten the vote. So at the next meeting they will vote. I don't know if he can veto that. But it's interesting. Almost every other major company, at least with market caps this size, have already separated chairman and CEO. Yeah. They all feel like it's a safer way to do business.
Well, in a lot of other meteoric companies' rises, the people that were involved originally, like Zuckerberg, have given up a lot more in order for financing and control and things like that. But since its inception, Facebook has never really had a money problem. So Zuckerberg hasn't really had to give up really anything.
And do they have a money problem now? I mean, they're still insanely rich and profitable.
Yeah.
So. Although if you're a shareholder, you lost 21%, and if you're a recent buyer, that hurts. That's painful.
But in other news, Facebook has signed an agreement with Washington State to end discriminatory ad targeting. This is another thing that came out of that earnings call.
So the story was about you could go in Facebook's, if you bought ads, you could be like, don't show this ad to Latino people. And it
was that wrong? Should we not have done that?
And it was specifically about housing. And we've got those HUD laws here in America. And you cannot discriminate when it comes to housing. It's like, we don't want their kind in our neighborhood. You just can't do that. It's totally against the law. So Washington sued them. And I guess this is the settlement. They've agreed to stop doing that. and work with Washington State to do whatever they want.
Facebook's reaction was basically like, well, we didn't intentionally set up to exclude that. It's just a natural consequence of the controls that we give advertisers for advertising on our platform.
But advertising based on race, you know, if you're Facebook and you claim to be this new age, you know, consider everybody, love everyone, workplace, diversity, you know, they got plenty of blue hairs. Someone on some level had to be like, hey, you know this API that we're building? It involves race. You can choose race. Maybe that's a problem.
What an amazing feature.
So yeah, I'm sure they'll get rid of that everywhere. I think the EU also had problems with that. So I guess they'll just fix it everywhere.
This is my favorite fake news story of the year. Facebook was forced to block 20,000 posts about snack food conspiracy after PepsiCo has sued. So Pepsi has these
we don't have this here.
They look like Cheetos. They're just
Curcure?
This is in India, but apparently they melt like plastic, and so there's fake news on India, on like India websites or whatever. Facebook is connected to that say that these things are made out of plastic because they're so terrible. And Pepsi is like, no, they're not made out of plastic. They just happen to melt like plastic.
Yeah, and because of the way Indian law works, you're allowed to get things taken down if you feel that they're defamatory. And Pepsi was like, this is defamatory toward our chips or whatever, sticks, and you must take them down. So they took down every video that has to do with it. But a lot of them were sort of lampooning the idea that they're plastic. Because if you think about it, you make plastic from oil, and you lose stuff along the way there. So a barrel of oil, you're only going to get a certain percentage of plastic out of that. So like, how would making these chips, a barrel of oil versus a barrel of corn or a barrel of rice, how would it make any sense to actually make chips out of plastic? That would be the dumbest move that you could make, but people are insistent on it.
Well, at least they didn't stone anybody to death this time.
That is an improvement, yeah. Well, who would you stone? The delivery guy?
Yeah, or the store that carries it. It's like you're poisoning our children.
Some guy stocking a vending machine just gets knifed in the back. I can see that happening.
We shouldn't laugh about that.
Oh, and once again, I have screwed up the alignment here. This is a Facebook story. We should have done this before the other one.
Facebook has added downvotes. So when you repost our content on Facebook, now you can downvote it. Woo!
This is a pretty cool image here where they've got the Roman gladiator and the thumbs down. Yeah, so basically, I'll show it to you here. It is exactly like Reddit, except on the other side. And they've only rolled this out to a small number of Facebook people. So if you see it on yours, you're one of the lucky few that you're being beta tested with downvotes. And I don't think it tells you who downvoted. But if you hate things on Facebook, you can express that now. And this, you can still do the angry face click in addition to the downvote. So you can doubly express your hatred.
Are you really sending a message to the person who posted it or just to the algorithm? Because this is how the algorithm establishes an echo chamber just for you.
Yeah, you're selling them data when you do that. It's like, oh, mark on the advertising program a profile that this person doesn't like X. I've also noticed a lot of people will downvote. Like, if you're posting something just to call attention to it, it's like, oh, look what Ajit Pai is doing. People will downvote it. They're like, ooh, Ajit Pai. And it's like, no. We're bringing light to it. People should find out. I know you don't like it. That's the point. No one likes it, but we need to tell people about it.
Kind of like this news program. It's like, I don't want to watch the news. It's too depressing. And it's like, but you have to.
Yeah, we have. Well, I saw we had one comment. It was like, hey, I found you guys through the Linus Tech Tips, and this is really depressing.
It's not. We're in this together. Like we all like that's why we tell you is because it's like we're like you. We think it's a problem, and we want to fix it.
When I'm putting the news together, I do try, unless it's just fluff. If there's a good news piece, I definitely want to throw it in there because it's nice to have that. It's kind of like the when you eat the sushi, what's the stuff you eat in between sushi bites? The pickle,
the ginger.
Oh yeah, the ginger. It's like the ginger, it cleanses your palate, gets you ready for the next horrible thing that happens.
That's why we give you the nonsense on Friday. Cleanses your palate for the next week.
But yeah, we had the Wyden stories this week and the Massachusetts stories. It's just that there's not that much great news that's serious. So,
All right, we'll see you in the next one.
maybe there'll be more good news tomorrow. The only way you can find out is to tune in.
Woo! And don't forget to cover our hardware videos because new hardware.
Watch them, don't cover them.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Unless you're a news, outlet of your own, then you could cover them.
No one cares. It's the 1st of August, and it's like new hardware season, and it's like the exciting time of the year. I love fall because it's all kinds of new stuff, and everybody tries to get their stuff out before Christmas.
It's not fall yet. Don't get ahead of yourself.
No, I'm getting slightly ahead of myself. But hey, I've got an excuse. I'm robo-tripping because of the cold.
The cold's really hanging on, isn't it?
Because I won't rest properly. It's like you need to like sleep and do stuff, and it's like
I don't know. We're a little concerned about Krista because no one knows her location at this point. She might have relapsed.
No, maybe she's got like 2 things at once. She got what I got and got something from somewhere else.
Maybe. Well, as has become a tradition at Level 1, mainly because I do it on purpose, we're starting out with some Tesla news.
It's their second story from Market Watch this week. And this story is bizarre. Like the headline is literally, Tesla asks suppliers for refunds to help it become profitable. And you read the memo that they sent to their suppliers, and it's basically, it literally seems to be saying, hey, can you give us a discount on the stuff that we already got? Because we need to be profitable. And if we're not profitable, we're not going to buy stuff from you because we're not going to be here.
Yeah. And their response, I guess, kind of plays it down a little bit, explains it a little bit. But their response was basically, we're not asking for money back. Although the memo certainly makes it sound like that. They didn't release the memo, but some guy leaked some of it, and you've seen some lines from it. But what they're saying is this is an ongoing relationship we have with all these places because we're going to keep making Teslas and we need to keep buying these parts from them. But they're saying it's stuff that the deal was already made, we haven't taken delivery of yet, and that's what we're trying. But still, kind of weird.
Yeah,
that's like, all right, we made this deal. Oh, hey, we're not doing as well as we thought. We need to renegotiate. That's like, well, we already made that deal.
When I first read this, I thought at first that they might be making a mountain out of a molehill because it's a normal version of this type of a request is, hey, do you have any ideas? Like as a company working with supply chains and vendors and stuff, it's not unusual just as a matter of business for your partners to ask you, hey, do you have any ideas on how we could save money on our supplies? Because your vendors may know better than you do. And you may get answers back that's like, yeah, there is no reason that we need to, double plate this type of metal, or there's no reason that we need to stamp this notch out here because you don't need to do that. And we could save on the, it's like, you don't need to phone us up on a Friday and say that you need all your stuff by Monday morning because then everybody's going to have to work over the weekend and we're going to have to charge you time and a half for overtime. And
because you need to get 5,000 out the door by Monday.
Yeah. And so it's like, that's normal for your vendors to give you some ideas about how you can save some money in your supply chain. So that version of the memo would be totally okay. But that's not what it was.
It's also very narcissistic because all of these places, they're getting supply from somewhere to make these parts. So are they supposed to then go to all of their vendors and be like, hey, Tesla's not doing so great. Can you give us some money back? And then does that go all the way down to the ore that's making the metals?
Yeah. Yeah.
But Tesla really did play it down and say that it's not actually going to destroy them if they don't get these rebates. So
can confirm crap rolls downhill.
Yeah. And I don't know if all those, do they need Tesla's business that much? I'm sure it's good business and there's a lot of it and it's heavy. So maybe they'll play ball. I don't know. Now this story, this is the kind of story that can make some of those doubts a little, it clarifies them a little bit.
Our commenters were right and we're willing to eat crow is what you're saying, right?
Well, okay. So this is Electrek, right? So Electrek is a website that if Tesla goes out of business, ain't going to be getting any hits anymore. So I don't trust them to be. I've read this from other publications who were totally on this other guy's side, but they claim they did find out that this guy was a, like a short seller.
He specifically worked in the oil industry as a stock trader, negotiator, whatever.
But his boss that made him do this is also in that business.
Because he was caught.
And they claim he's a big Tesla supporter. Anyway, this guy, he went under the pseudonym Montana Skeptic, and he posted on Seeking Alpha, which is a stock trading website. And he was big about, Tesla's bad. You should short Tesla. Don't buy Tesla. Don't believe the hype. Musk tattled on him. He called his employer and got this guy. This guy deleted his Twitter after he was found out.
Wow. I mean, that's... I would have doubled down if I was that guy. Like, if I legit believed the whole, global warming and oil is the future, and what sense does it make to be traveling around? And
well, no, he never brought up the oil thing, which maybe proves that he wasn't acting genuinely. But his whole thing was just that they're going to go bankrupt, and that's bad business. They're bad at business, and the cars aren't as good as they say. So
you're feeding that engagement machine for those pro-Musk people that are always commenting, and they're like, the oil industry is out to get Musk. It's a big conspiracy. And there's at least one data point that's, apparently this guy that was heavily invested.
We've got two stories here that sort of
dovetail.
But I don't think it's mutually exclusive. Tesla could be a terrible company, and the oil industry could be out to get him.
Both of those things could be true.
Yeah. And we've certainly seen big oil do some nasty things in the past, like overthrow Iran.
That was a thing. I mean, we were willing to do that over fruit, let alone oil.
Pineapples are delicious, man. Well, Windows 10, bad news for Germany. Windows 10 is increasing prices.
Oh, that's a joke from the last episode where Germany's going from Linux to Windows. So, yeah, Microsoft has acknowledged price increases upcoming for Office 2019 and Windows 10 enterprise users. This makes me sad.
Yeah, this only affects the enterprise user, but basically it's kind of like that they had multiple pricing tiers and they're kind of rolling them all up into one, but it's the expensive one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, bad news if you're running enterprise Office. And I don't think it affects Office 365, but when they reached out for comment and they were like, we are not currently addressing price changes to Office 365. The answer wasn't no. The answer was,
but we're not going to deal with it.
We'll tell you about that later.
The crazy thing was that with Office 365 with software assurance, or not Office 365, with Office and software assurance, it came out to be slightly less expensive to do that than Office 365, just because the product life, like the release cycle, has become so long with the regular version of Office. So all of this is going to be gentle encouragement to just go to the subscription model because it's more profitable.
Yeah, they increased both the yearly and the monthly, but it still is a way better deal to do the yearly. So, well, as we also talked about in the last episode, it is the anniversary. Did you get him a present? It's the anniversary of the Equifax data breach.
I got myself some credit protection service. Does that count?
Most importantly, as Boing Boing points out, nothing has happened. There have been no criminal prosecutions. I think there were some slap on the wrist fines, but the world has basically forgotten, and Equifax has pretty much gotten away with it. They say they've spent $200 million to beef up security, and that should really be all that we say about the matter. It's settled as far as they're concerned.
I would love to have some of the security people that I follow on Twitter, send Swift on security to audit their stuff, because I'm sure that it is a raging dumpster fire as it is today.
They point out that they did hire some big names, and I think they did it for that reason, to sort of make sure it's like, no, really, no, we did it. We actually fixed it.
They probably gave those guys such a narrow scope that it's like, we want to make sure that the Office copier is secure. We're not interested in anything else. Your scope is to secure the copier. And those guys were like, okay. It's like so-and-so security consultant, can you certify that we're totally secure? And it's like, well, for the scope that you gave me, yeah, we unplugged the copier, so there's no way the Chinese are going to hack your copier.
But the big story here isn't that who cares if they've fixed anything? The punishment for that kind of failure should be your company goes out of business. Not
golden parachute?
Yeah. Well, golden parachute all you want, but the company should not exist a year later.
Too big to fail.
Absolutely. Too tied into, as we found out, they were just tied into every insurance and credit reporting and It was crazy how much depended on them. It's like, wow, how can this be? But there it is.
In other semiconductor news,
bad news for Qualcomm. First of all, they wanted to sell themselves, to give themselves up to Broadcom. But Trump said, no, you can't do it because of China. And so they said, all right, we'll buy NXP. And then China said no. So they can't win. They're between warring superpowers and they just can't get ahead.
They're even trying to do this whole x86 emulation thing, but Intel's been doing some saber rattling on that. Man, Qualcomm just can't catch a break.
Yeah, and they're profitable still. It's not like they're, not a good company. They're still making chips and selling them and everything's fine, but they're trying to find a future-proof avenue. Like they're looking at the writing on the wall and it's like, it's moving so fast. Look at Intel. Intel's got the desktop and what's happening to the desktop. And they're not even doing that all that great anymore. So I think Qualcomm is just like, we've got to branch out, but there's all this political intrigue and I can't do it.
How did we get to that? Like, where it's like, this is a crazy time to be alive. Like somebody has got to be working on a novel or something about this because it's so like, life is stranger than fiction, but it's literally people that don't understand anything about technology are using technology companies as pawns in some kind of political war. And because they understand technology so little, it is much easier to see their overall agenda. And the level of corruption that you see in these systems is shocking.
I was actually, you look at all this and you're like, wow, we've never seen a world this corrupt. This is like, we're reaching new grounds. But then I was watching that Netflix documentary about Caesar and the triumvirate. And it's like, oh, no, they were doing this,
It's just easier to see now.
At the beginning of recorded history is when this started. So, I guess it's not going to stop, is it? There's not going to be a breaking point. Well, in the hardware news, actually, I think this might still be business news, is Mozilla. So Chrome has rolled out this new way of handling YouTube. And it works really well in Chrome. Doesn't work quite as well in Edge and Firefox, or at all in IE11. So
it turns out the problem with JavaScript is there's no standard library. It's like, I need to do some stuff with some time zones or some dates or something. It's like, well, good luck with that. You're going to be using moment.js probably because there's no standard library. The Material API is what Google is using to try to make the YouTube interface faster. But that API was deprecated, so it's not natively supported on browsers other than Chrome. There's a polyfill, but everything ends up running in JavaScript, so it's slower than molasses running down the side of a jar in January.
Yeah, and it does. So
except in Chrome,
IE11 can't handle that at all. So they said they've made YouTube so that it uses the old version, which is fine in IE11. And Mozilla is saying, wait a minute, why don't you just do that for us? Because we don't have your new technology either. Why are you running this new version that we can't handle if IE11 isn't treated like that?
Well, it runs, but it runs slower in Firefox.
And obviously, YouTube is one of the big normie sites. A lot of people, they're going to fire up a browser and be like, this doesn't feel good. Ooh, Chrome is faster. So it seems like that's on purpose.
Mozilla's probably going to bring back the Polymer API thing, maybe, possibly.
Well, there are plugins that can force it to use the old version.
There's some stuff in the W3C that makes me think that, like, there have been a lot of proposals for a JavaScript standard library, basically. I'm oversimplifying. And a lot of the stuff that I see from some of the people that are connected to Google seems like waffling. Like, they're not saying, no, we don't need that. They're just whatever direction the committee's going in. It's sort of like this analysis paralysis, like decision-making thing where it's like, well, we need to make sure that the API is perfect because we don't want to paint ourselves into a corner. And it's like, is it disingenuous or is it just that we haven't figured it out yet?
I think it's maybe a little of both, but probably like 80-20.
Yeah.
I think Google knows what's happening and they like it.
Yeah.
So
they like being in charge.
Well, are you planning a trip to Taiwan? And I guess you'd have to fly there. There's no other way to get there. But how are you going to go on? You're going to book your flight. You might notice something a little weird when you hit that country drop down.
Yeah, American Delta and United have changed how they refer to the self-ruled Taiwan on websites to avoid Chinese penalties because they also operate in China.
Yeah, this is the one China policy. China says Taiwan belongs to us, and anybody that says otherwise is our enemy. So these airlines, because they operate in China, what choice do they have?
I like how the other bullet point there, which is earlier this year, China demanded that foreign firms and airlines in particular refer to Taiwan as blah, blah, blah China, but the White House referred to it as Orwellian nonsense.
Yeah, but the airline companies are playing ball. So if you're going to fly, for example, you're going to fly to Taipei, you're going to book that flight as Taipei. There is no country. So really, it's just confusing people that are trying to fly.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they're not going to understand that. Because it doesn't say Taipei, China. It's a weird thing. But they've all given in. No airline stood up for poor little Taiwan. So we'll see what happens.
That is a little disconcerting. I hope that Taiwan is a very delicate situation that I hope is not messed with, because there's a lot of really amazing, like it is, Taiwan honestly is probably the new Silicon Valley. Like all the magic that was happening in Silicon Valley in the 80s is right now happening in Taiwan, like as if it was the start of the 80s. Like things didn't really get interesting until the late 80s. Where we are in Taiwan right now is the early 80s.
But think about how juicy that makes it in the eyes of China's just going to gobble that up.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they're at the head of everything.
Yeah. It's not good.
And if you're the U.S., do you let that happen?
I'm really excited to see what comes out of Taiwan in the next 5 or 10 years because we haven't seen anything yet.
Well, let's hope it's not a giant fireball. Google, speaking of giant fireballs, Google has stepped in to try and prevent your phone from bursting into one.
Because mining apps in the Play Store with your phone is a great way to destroy your battery.
Yeah, that's literally the excuse they gave of why they're now getting rid of all cryptocurrency mining apps from the Play Store. It could cause deformation or overheating of a battery.
I couldn't confirm it, but there was an app that was removed from the Play Store that the only purpose was to monitor your mining rigs to be sure that they were checking in with the pool or whatever at appropriate times. And supposedly that app was caught up in it as well, but I was not able to find or verify that.
Well, the site, this was Bleeping Computer. They claim that the policy excludes sites for managing offline mining somewhere else. So as long as the phone isn't doing it, it's okay.
Supposed to be okay.
But
that's what I read, but I don't know if that's actually, like, they're just shoot first, ask questions later. I'm not sure.
Oh, Chromium.
MoviePass. Remember MoviePass? We've mocked it a few times. Turns out they're having cash flow issues. They had a major website outage because they didn't pay their hosting bill. Yeah, totally out of money because they didn't pay their bills. So they got emergency funding of $5 million.
Yeah, and I don't understand how they didn't see this coming. Wouldn't you? It's like, hey, Bob, set an email alert. If the account gets below 10 million, just have that email me. Somebody should know, right? So literally, it wasn't working because it couldn't buy your tickets. MoviePass, they don't really have an API set up with these theaters. They literally just buy your tickets remotely, and then through the app somehow you confirm they give them to you. But the money is given to the theaters in huge lump sums so that they have like a cache of money waiting there, and they ran out.
And the website went down.
Yeah, so they're hurting bad because it's a crazy business model.
Now let's see if we can fake news spin this into something else. So the fake news version of this is MoviePass is so popular. Why aren't you on it? Because it's so popular, it's down.
Yeah, but I don't think they want new customers right now, do they? That's costing a lot of money. I think they thought that a lot of normies would be. Remember when Olive Garden did the unlimited Olive Garden pass for $250?
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, people will buy this and they'll forget they have it. No, only very, very seriously unsettled people bought the Olive Garden pass. And they went there every day. every day. They didn't care. They did soup and salad and breadsticks every day, and they had to get rid of it. And that's exactly what's going to happen to MoviePass.
I mean, if you're a NEET and you're watching Level 1 content every day, and you could go to the movies instead, wouldn't you go to the movies, even if it's terrible?
It's free. Why not? I guess you have to leave your house, though. So, Well, switching into the hardware version of things, this is a hilarious story. One of the things I noted about this story, if we look at the website real quick, they didn't note it on Motherboard, but when you start scrolling down, they found them.
Apple is like, no, this belongs to us.
Yeah. So these were internal repair videos.
Yeah, it showed that it's surprisingly easy. So apparently Apple, even internally, is like, you know what? It's not really that big of a deal to repair iPhones, which is contrary to their public-facing opinion of repairing iPhones. It's like, we need to build a robot to take it apart and shred them because people can't do it. It looked pretty easy in their own videos, though. Yeah, and Motherboard pointed out that iFixit has their own series of videos, and they're incredibly similar. Like, they all came to the same conclusions. This is the best way to do this, even though they didn't have the Apple videos to work from. Nice. So it's not, that certainly hurts that whole right to repair thing. But when the private sector did the exact same thing that you did after looking at how you screwed up
what was
product.
obvious.
Yeah. So that's a little bit embarrassing for Apple. It looks like they got right on top of it, but I'm sure they're still out there floating around somewhere. If you really want them, you can probably find them.
We've also got a follow-up to our Apple new 6-core MacBook thermal throttling story that we reported on last week.
Yeah. They are claiming that it is totally software. You buy that?
It's software in the sense that the software should be limiting the processor speed more than it was, because a lot of wasted effort on the processor's part generating extra heat was switching back and forth between its very slowest speed and its very fastest speed. So what the software fix does is it makes the processor run at a slower speed sooner before it hits the thermal limits, and then it just sort of coasts as long as it can, because it's not even really necessarily processor related. Some people are saying it's like the VRM area, because the processor switching between very fast speeds and very slow speeds is harder on it than just running at a slower speed to begin with. But somewhere in between the slowest speed and the fastest speed. So that's what they're changing.
Yeah, and this is on the back of the keyboard meltdown, and it's not a good week for Apple. And it's not getting any better, because the T2 chip, which is involved in some of the security stuff that it does, and Siri lives in the T2, which might make you feel good when it fails. That's caused them problems, and they're having to replace a lot of MacBooks.
The shocking thing about this is that when this failure occurs, you lose the information stored internally on your SSD because of the in the iMac Pro, because of the RAID key situation with the iMac Pro. Like, it's just, you got to replace your logic board. Guess what? You lose all your data too. And it's like, wow, that doesn't seem like a good design.
Yeah. And they've talked about, some people have thought they found a solution for it. And there's a lot of solutions in the forums, but none of them are 100%. And some people are now on their third MacBook.
Wow.
Because of this. And Apple is not asking questions. They're just like, here's a new one. So that shows you how serious it is. Because that's costing them quite a bit of money. It might not be worth what they charge for it, but it still does cost them something there might be a big rush on the refurb market. Might be able to get a good one once they fix it. Don't do it. Well, Intel, more interesting news. I don't know if this is bad, but it's interesting. I guess it's bad in that I don't think they're doing this because they want to. I think their hand is being forced.
This is a leak that shows that the the i7 8-core chips are 8-core 8-thread, not 18-core 16 or 8-core 16-thread. But there's going to be a new i9 on the desktop platform that's 8-core 16-thread, which is odd for Intel to do that. Ars
Technica blames it on them just simply hitting the limit on what they can do with this size transistor. And we know that they can't get the next size down. That's not working for them. So I think Intel, we talked about this when Ryzen first came out, and then, they refreshed it and everything. It was like, well, it just keeps getting worse. They can't get behind. They can't just not release a cycle.
Yeah.
And so what do you do? And it seems like this is what they're doing. They're just changing numbers. It's like, just move stuff around.
I want to see when this actually is released and come, because this is just rumor. I mean, it's not, there's not anything that's like super confirmed here, but there's also a rumor that the integrated heat spreader is going to be soldered. That was a rumor for the 8086K as well, but that may have just been insider sources being mixed up about the 8086K, which is like an anniversary 5 gigahertz 6-core CPU, and just getting mixed up between that CPU and this CPU that was being worked on. I'm not real sure.
Well, how would you like to store all of iTunes on a wafer the size of a quarter?
That would be amazing.
That's what we're being promised because of storage using hydrogen atoms.
Yeah, 138 petabit per square inch.
Now, here's the drawback, and it's a pretty serious drawback. At best, it's 1 bit every 2 seconds.
Yeah, but they're working on that.
You can't stream HD video. Pro tip.
That's the write speed. The read speed, I think, is this is actually some kind of a silicon carrier for these hydrogen atoms. And so whether or not there's a hydrogen atom can be read using standard interface circuitry. So it's really just the writing that's a problem with this so far, because the fabrication part of it is actually possible with the existing silicon fabrication machinery.
And somehow, hydrogen atom is half a nanometer, but somehow, I guess because they're using hydrogen atoms, they're not getting any of the weird particle physics stuff going on. So yeah, it's promising. I suspect that's going to be a lot of years, though, before they actually get to anything like that. Well, robots.
Time to enter the robot section.
Time for the robots. And how about lettuce collecting robots? Pretty exciting. These are let me scroll down and look at them here.
They've got water knives.
Yeah, all that steam coming off of there, they're using tiny jets of water to cut the lettuce at the bottom.
Neat.
And apparently that's, cutting lettuce is one of the worst jobs because you got to bend over and cut and then stand up and bend over and cut. And so this is Wired. And you see this a lot coming from Wired because they do a lot of robot stories. Those are hot, I guess. And they're like, now don't worry. This is not going to take away jobs. Well, it is going to take away jobs, but that's okay because there's a shortage of workers. So it's like, So what happens is instead of bending over and cutting, you walk next to the truck and clean up the lettuce as it's cut and delivered into the thing. But how long until a robot can clean the lettuce?
It's going to be really quick, like immediate almost, I'd say.
That is the Amazon issue of they're bad at gripping things.
Yeah.
But that's when they have to grip different kinds of things.
Lettuce is pretty uniform.
Lettuce, yeah, it's going to be about the same. You can have a tolerance level. And I don't think it would bruise it too bad if they, got rough with it a little bit. So, yeah.
It's probably fine.
We're going to have totally robotic harvested lettuce soon. And
in other hardware news this week, we have separate videos on the other hardware news this week. So look for that. Sorry. Back to robots. Boston Dynamics is in the news again.
Robot dogs. Who's excited?
Not the pet kind, sort of the terrifying kind.
Well, you could have a pet.
That looks way like there's this episode of Black Mirror, and that looks like one of they were super lethal.
Now you can also have his arm here. This is his arm. Look at that.
Yeah, that's not scary at all.
It looks like a snake.
It's a stabilized platform.
Look at that thing.
I need a Boston Dynamics cameraman. That's what I need.
That's incredible. So these things are going to be, they're making. How many they're going to make a bunch of them, like 500,000, I think, and they're going to be.
Oh, it lets the other one in. That's nice.
Well, there's no reason to have two arms. The other one's got the payload. So if you've dreamed about a terrifying robot dog being in your life, now's the time.
Can you imagine the burglars of the future breaking into a house with those?
And that thing, I think they said it weighs. Was it 155 pounds or was it 55 pounds? I don't know, but it could get you down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could just get you around the legs and wrap you up. Get on your back like a monkey.
Yeah.
Probably choke you out. Yeah, I would probably get one though. for security. That'd be a good.
It would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Except for that time it accidentally attacked the UPS guy.
You could UPS guys could carry like an RFID in their pocket or something. Of course, then criminals would just steal those.
Yeah.
Well, do you hate call centers? You might hate them worse. I don't know.
Google is building virtual agents to handle call centers grunt work. Did you see the demo from Google I.O. where they made a hair appointment? It's like
Duplex.
that in reverse.
Yeah, Duplex is going to be part of this, but they're making it better. So the idea is when you call up Charter to complain about your ISP, you're not going to talk to a human until the AI decides what it is you need to talk about. And
so how long before Duplex is just going to be talking to itself?
well, that's true. Yeah, hey Duplex. Well, they could probably do like those supersonic beeps at one another. It's like,
no.
We'll just negotiate this without voice. I'll tell you what, it's probably some bad news for India though.
Yeah.
Because that's probably like a huge part of their GDP is the tech support thing.
Call center.
And if a robot starts doing it, real bad for them. Now this story is interesting. Well, I got an interesting take on this, but what's your thoughts on?
All right. So Google self-driving cars are going to Walmart to pick up your groceries, basically, is what this is about. And I don't think that I like Walmart enough to really like. I still don't like. Maybe with Kroger.
Well, they're not just picking up your groceries, but they could take you to Walmart as well.
Yeah, but you don't have to. They could just do it
if you wanted to shop. No, but here's my thought on that. You don't like going to Walmart, as you just said, right?
Right.
And the reason I'm going to guess that you don't like going to Walmart is because there's a certain kind of people at Walmart.
Peopleofwalmart.com is a website, yes.
What is this thing going to smell like?
That would be really bad.
I mean, they would have to make the insides just stainless steel. And
They just hose it off after every...
well, steam it. Just, like a power washer with steam.
See, I was thinking like I could just order from the Walmart app and I don't need to go. Like the car can just bring it to me and save a trip.
That'd be nice, yeah. Now, they did talk about because Walmart is one of the cheaper destinations. I don't know how true that is anymore because they were having trouble keeping that up. But you're probably not going to get the Walmart courier if you're just buying, like some Hot Pockets. You're going to have to spend a certain amount. And I wonder how that's going to work.
I think as long as you spend a certain amount monthly, it probably works. Because you think about services like Blue Apron, they're profitable and people are willing to pay a premium to not have to think about putting their ingredients together or anything like that. So imagine like the Walmart, Amazon, Whole Foods version of that, where it literally just plans every meal for you and it just does it.
Or it could be like an Amazon Prime thing, an annual cost. And then, some people never use it and that subsidizes the people that go every day.
I would probably enjoy cooking more if I could just, if I had the process down, because when there's been like a special event or like I had to do something for family or whatever, and I've actually put the effort into planning something correctly, and then I can just move through the recipe really quickly, that has been much, much more satisfying than just stumbling around for an hour trying to prepare a meal.
There's definitely going to be, just like with the Movie Pass people, there's going to be a kind of Walmart customer who's unemployed, has nothing to do all day, and every single day they summon the Walmart car and go to Walmart.
And just hang out.
And just, yeah.
It'll be like the bookstores. It's like Barnes & Noble found success, not by trying to be a better bookstore, but by turning it into a neighborhood hangout. Walmart's going to be the neighborhood hangout.
I can see that. Especially older people. Like they like to go and hang out. Yeah. Well, we've talked a lot about AI and medicine. And I got to say, just like with the Tesla thing, a lot of people in the comments are very, very skeptical about AI and medicine. And
maybe for good reason.
Maybe they were right.
Watson has reportedly recommended cancer treatments that were unsafe and incorrect.
This is actually a quote from the article. This product is a piece of shit. Man, if I ever get cancer, that's the doctor I want. I want a straight shooting guy like that.
That makes me think that the data that they fed the system was bad, which will be a reflection of the doctors.
Well, so here's the scenario. I think it was more than once, but this was the worst one. A guy came in and he had lung cancer with severe bleeding. And so Watson was like, all right, let's get you on chemotherapy and go ahead. We're going to give you this experimental drug. But the number one side effect of the experimental drug, hemorrhaging.
Oh, yeah, that's bad when you're already bleeding.
Yeah. So would have killed the guy, most likely. And these doctors that they interviewed basically just said, this brought people in because it was like a marketing gimmick, and that's pretty much why we got it, but it's useless. We hate it. So
nice.
Some work to be done at IBM.
I really want to look at those graphs though, like an AI that will produce that recommendation. The data that went into it in the first place is probably deeply disturbing.
Well, IBM's response was basically what you're saying, which is now that we have it here, we can keep improving it, so it'll get better over time. But in the meantime, like, you pulled the trigger too quick. You shouldn't have. It's like when you put a game on early access and people give it bad reviews. It's like, but it's in early access. You took money for it.
I guarantee you there's a law firm somewhere that's looking at those results, and they're thinking, we could probably use Watson to figure out which doctors to sue for malpractice.
Well, if he ever starts making real decisions, they certainly sue him.
Oh, surely with our next story, we've stumbled into the nonsense section of the week. This seems like it's a little premature for the nonsense section.
Well, it's not nonsense. It kind of is, but we didn't put it there because this really is artificial intelligence, or at least that's what Microsoft is calling it.
The headline is Windows 10 will try not to reboot when you're just grabbing a cup of coffee, because whatever they did with Windows 10, and it's like, I'm going to reboot for updates, it is garbage. It is utter, like, no matter what you tell it, it just does whatever it wants.
Yeah. So
and apparently they need AI to solve that problem. I don't think that's true. I think that's not true at all.
They definitely subscribe to the idea that the user does not know. The user cannot be trusted. There's too many security risks, like, the Intel ones, and we need to update whenever we feel like it, and they won't let us. So now, because of the hatred, because it updates at the worst times, they claim they're going to try to do AI that decides when is the best time to update for you.
No. No.
You don't have a choice. Just like Siri. You will love Siri. She's lovable. And you'll accept her and you will love her.
Oh, our next story is amazing.
This is the third week, I think. This is a broiling, highly contested thing that's going on in the world, and that is the Amazon facial recognition.
It's back in the news, and it must be back in the news because of good reasons, right? It's like, no, the picture that you're looking at in the article is that the Amazon face recognition has identified a lawmaker as Warner Vogels.
No. That's that guy runs the company. He runs the AI. That's like the CEO. All of the lawmakers that it discovered had one thing in common. They were black. And so when it found a black lawmaker, it had like an 80% chance of saying, that's a criminal. Embarrassing a bit, huh? Now, Amazon's response to this is that they were running it in the 80% mode, and they needed to turn it up to like the 95% mode.
95% mode is still terrible.
But still, it is very embarrassing. And we've heard of stories in the past of AI is just not good with darker skin. And apparently Amazon has not done much to fix that. And when you look at, Amazon is working with law enforcement, and I'm not trying to paint any correlations here. I'm just saying statistically, the people that end up on the wrong end of law enforcement in this country have darker skin a lot of the time. Whether that's racial bias or reality, whatever, that doesn't matter. What's important is these are the people that the AI is going to be looking at, and it doesn't work.
Are you saying that it's a vicious cycle?
There would be. Yeah, I think so. So they've written letters and they've demanded some answers, and I don't think Amazon they're being pretty tight-lipped about this. They're not talking too much about it, but that's pretty embarrassing.
Good job, Amazon.
Yeah. That's bad PR.
It's terrible. That's pretty much it for this week. What do we got lined up for Friday?
Well, for Friday, we've got a bonanza of security news. Let me just warn you up front. It is a terrifying week in terms of security. So many terrible things. We've got some new Spectre, a couple of new Spectres. We've got some data leaks. We always got those. But then to taper off from that, we got a little gaming news that's lighthearted. We've got nonsense. And we've got one design story, but Chris is not here, so I don't know. I don't know anything about it.
Probably going to cut it.
We'll see you then.
See ya. Be sure to check out our hardware. It's Friday, August 3rd, and I'm still robo-tripping from my cold.
It's a whole other week. Tripping all week long.
It's not, it's not really. I mean, I don't know. I keep giving it away. It's like we're something, the fourth wall. I don't know. More like the fourth estate on this channel. Am I right?
This room does have 4 walls, though.
Is there a room that doesn't have 4 walls?
Yeah, the ones that they film sitcoms in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's where that comes from. So today will be security, and boy, is there a lot of bad news in the security world today.
I was pretty sure that this first story was nonsense because it's got to be.
It's real. So we talked about before that when you upload your genetic profile, the cops can look at it. Well, it's not just the cops. Now the drug companies are getting in on it.
23andMe, which is a company that tells you about your genetic heritage, is sharing its 5 million clients' genetic data with drug giant GlaxoSmithKline. They're the people that make medications and have earned public ire for raising what they charge for medications because they can. Because turns out if you're dying from something, you're going to pay whatever it is, no matter how much it costs.
And it's difficult for them to get people to volunteer their genetic data because that's a pretty personal thing. But it turns out with 23andMe, when you signed up, those terms and conditions you didn't read? Well, you agreed that they could resell your genetic data. I think it's anonymized, but by the very nature of genetic data, there is no anonymity. Like that DNA is the final word in identifying people in court and stuff like that. So
I feel like only the European Union is up to step up and regulate this shenanigans.
Well, that won't stop them here. So
no, because U.S. company or whatever.
Now you can opt out, and if you go right now and delete your profile, they claim they will completely purge you from the system. They won't keep your stuff. Well, that's what they claim.
Here's a prediction from the 2021 Level 1 news, which is, oops, it was a technical oversight. We didn't delete that stuff. Sorry, that was our bad. We didn't mean to do that.
Yeah.
So
bad news.
The other thing that I like about this story is that it's probably going to be the plot of some sort of future dystopian, like, I don't know, somebody wake up Neil Gaiman or something because I've got the plot for his next novel, and it is, somebody's genetic code has the solution for cancer in it, but they're dying of cancer themselves and can't afford the drug medication based on their own DNA.
Well, I think a better way to go with that is the GlaxoSmithKline, or the fictionalized version of them, they discover that and send a team of assassins. Because, the possible cure for cancer must be destroyed, or otherwise it's going to destroy their business model.
Yeah.
And there's one plucky, detective who finds it, like Keanu Reeves, who finds all this out. And he's got to keep that guy alive in the face of, the entire medical industry and the security complex.
Keanu thinks that the medical industry is after him, but imagine his surprise when government agents are after him as well. And it's like, how deep does this deep state go?
Oh, yeah. That could be a series of movies.
It's like The Bourne Identity, but even darker.
Well, beginning the long string of exploits and leaks, we start with new variants of Spectre. We've had a new variant of Spectre every week for a very long time. Yeah. We got a couple this week. And this one it seems scarier than it is.
Spectre is a part of a class of attacks that are around speculative execution that are in modern CPUs. And by exploiting the machinery of the CPU for how the CPU deals with speculative execution, you can read parts of memory that you're not supposed to be able to read and otherwise do stuff to the system that you're not supposed to be able to do. Well, NetSpectre, this new variant, is able to exfiltrate data over the network at a rate of tens of bits per hour.
Yeah. That's why it's not so scary. It's really not. It's effective, but what are you going to do with it? what could you get 10 bits an hour of that's ever going to mean anything to you?
This type of vulnerability is starting to make me think that this has been sponsored by like nation states. Like this whole thing, like this whole chain of vulnerabilities makes me think that this was deliberately done by some 3-letter agency or collusion of 3-letter agencies in the developed world. Because how is this not caught before now? This is insane.
So this one doesn't need, your machine doesn't have to be infected. Like all the other Spectre attacks, you had to be compromised some other way. This one is not that case. They can actually do it over the network, but like we said, it's so slow, there would be no reason to. I mean, you're talking about how many hours would it take you to credit card number?
Yeah.
It would be ridiculous.
It might be worth doing this. Like if you had a data center, like if you had a machine in a data center, again, customers like in Amazon are more at risk. So let's say that you keep buying Amazon instances until you happen to get an Amazon instance that is adjacent to the target that you're targeting. Then you're going to have a really high speed connection to that adjacent target. Maybe so adjacent that you're not really going to be noticed when you're pumping an insane amount of network traffic to that machine to try to exfiltrate this data. Because the farther away you are and the less bandwidth you have, the slower it gets. And so I can see that this is bad for Amazon customers, and bad for insider threats inside your company, but probably not bad for your just random WordPress web server on the internet.
And next up, another Spectre attack. This is Spectre RSP. That's, what is that, return stack buffer, I think. So this one is unique. It uses speculative just like everything else, but it's unique because it uses that RSB. The existing fixes don't fix this.
Womp womp. We're going to have to get this fixed in silicon.
Yeah, it just keeps getting worse. But maybe just a glimmer. Oh, wait, this is not the right story. Oh, later on we'll talk about this story. This is more bad news.
Microsoft has discovered a supply chain attack at an unnamed maker of PDF software. So this is the supply chain attack. What this is like, let's say that you write a popular application and you're, a shareware developer or whatever, you host a download on a website. Well, it turns out that people can target, your Amazon S3 bucket or wherever you've hosted that instead of you directly. And they may be manipulating your freeware download in ways that you don't realize. And that's what happened with this third-party PDF software.
Yeah, this was a font, an Asian language font. So they managed to somehow get this font into a library, and the PDF software unknowingly used that library. So as soon as you install it, you give it permission, system permission, and installs this font pack, and one of them starts mining cryptocurrency.
Fonts that can mine cryptocurrency. What a time to be alive.
They found it rather quickly because it wasn't signed like all the other fonts. But how many people did it get before then? It's a terrifying thing that one Asian language font can just poison the entire stream of software. So,
why does the font format on Windows tolerate executable code? Who designed this?
Now, this was a story that was supposed to be next in line if I hadn't screwed up terribly.
Academics have announced a fix for Spectre and Rowhammer attacks. Rowhammer is an attack where you can flip bits in memory by hammering adjacent cells in memory, which is like you fill it all with ones, and those ones just can't wait to hop over into adjacent memory cells, so you can introduce corruption into system memory, maybe in a controlled way, and use that to take over a system.
These are both software fixes. They didn't give much information about the Rowhammer one. They talked a little bit about the other one, and that basically just had to do with separating processes more in software.
Yes, and they have a patch for the Linux kernel. So I imagine that this is going to get scrutinized by people that actually know what they're doing, and so we'll see how good of a mitigation this is.
They did get, their paper got accepted for some con or something like that, or maybe it was a publication. So somebody has looked at it and said, this seems like it's real, but we don't have any details about it.
We just don't know until Linus signs off on it. Linus, not Linus. Linus.
You confused half the audience there.
Sorry.
So Bluetooth. This one, I almost left it out because when you get to the end of the article, it's like, this is never going to be a real threat, right?
Patches are on the way for Bluetooth, a Bluetooth bug that could affect Apple, Intel, and Broadcom, and some Android devices. So this has to do with like key pair exchange. But if you man in the middle of the key pair exchange between Bluetooth devices, you still have to deliver those packets to the end device. So this would be good for 3-letter agencies, but this is probably not good for just casual surreptitious listening in of conversations from Bluetooth devices.
Yeah, you have to be within range of both. They both have to have the same flaws. So like if you're Bluetoothing your phone in your car might have the exploit, but your phone might be updated, you're fine, because both devices have to be compromised. So it's very unlikely that this will affect anybody, because it's also very, very intensive in how much work you're going to have to put into getting it to operate correctly. And you've got that tiny time window of the sync happening to get it in there.
So what you're saying is FBI surveillance van only?
And incredible timing on top of that.
Oh, Brian Krebs, you warmed my heart.
Was it Russia last week?
It was Russia.
Russia had and not to be outdone, how about Virginia?
Blacksburg, Virginia. Oh, hackers made off with $2.4 million.
Same story. And, we just keep... Oh, I didn't leave that up long enough. I'm sorry. It's the same story. It's Barb. It's Barb at the front desk. She downloaded a special version of Pixel Dungeon because she just loves Pixel Dungeon. And she got fished. And $2.4 million later... Now, the big story here is this insurance company doesn't want to pay out on this because they claim this was a bank robbery, not cybercrime.
Wow.
How could it? I mean,
what's the distinction?
But that's what the bank is saying. That's crazy.
Somebody should write that outfit in Germany that's abandoning their Linux computers, and maybe the bank will want to buy those, because that would be a pretty good hardening for Barb in accounting from being able to install that hacked version of Pixel Dungeon.
I mean, you've seen what the financial protocols are like.
Yeah.
You'd have to rewrite like 10 different pieces of software in Linux.
It would be a lot more hardened, though. Like, if we just go ahead and bite the bullet now, we would avoid a lot. I mean, $2.4 million goes a long way to paying those developer salaries to actually make that make that a reality.
So the way they did it was exactly the same as the Russians. And this is a lot of planning and like execution. It's really impressive. They transfer the funds, and within 10 minutes, it's all bled out of ATMs across the country, like all across the country. So they have a huge network of people with fake cards, and they disable the PIN and disable the security, and then boom, they hit you with all that cash, and then they're out.
Nice.
Yeah, it's incredible. Well, we see this story over and over.
Chrome extensions, Android, and iOS apps have been caught collecting browsing data again. So what separates this from the other 800 stories we covered on this?
Well, not a lot. This is a couple of ad blockers, I think. There's a list of the affected apps down here. There we go, yeah. Block site, proper blocker, CRX mouse, speed booster. So, and there's one iOS app. So if you're using any of these, guess what? Your browsing data has been compromised.
Dun, 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 dun.
And I think they're taking them out of the store, but they've already got your data.
Slap on the wrists. I mean, more is happening to these app makers than happened to Equifax. Let's just be clear about that.
That's true. I mean,
what a world to live in. I mean,
so your YouPorn history is worse than your social security number and all of your financial data, right? Is that what they're telling us? Now, this story, I was shocked to find out that prisoners get tablets with media.
Well, this is sort of low security. This is a minimum security prison, and they're these special prisoner tablets, which are very restricted and, blah, blah, blah. But there's nothing worse than an adversary with time on their hands.
Can you imagine? I mean, think about if you and I were in prison and we got nothing to do all day, and we haven't had a computer in our hands in 4 years while we were in maximum. And then we get downgraded to the camp and they hand us a tablet. Of course you're going to hack it. That's what you did in high school, right?
They gave themselves $225,000 in credit. Now, they didn't actually steal any money. It was just buggy software.
Yeah, when we say $225,000, they gave themselves credit toward digital items. So they were buying songs and media and phone calls and things like that.
Let me tell you, the prison industrial complex that we've got here in America, Pixel Dungeon might be free for you, but on the inside, that Pixel Dungeon is going to cost you $5 American.
$5 might be low. I saw there was so that same company, they mentioned it in the article. That company had just they'd been sued because they were doing the FaceTime, $14 a minute.
Wow.
Yeah. And they won that case. They're allowed to charge $14 a minute for FaceTime in prison through these. And that's one of the things these guys were stealing, quote unquote stealing. So, but they got caught. And, here's the thing about it. And guys in prison, I think, are really bad at this. I think one guy figured it out because, like most people in prison, they're not going to be able to work that out. And he clearly told everybody. And if he would have kept it to himself and kept the numbers low, I think he'd still be, they
wouldn't have noticed.
His Netflix would be free for the rest of his stay. But you had to tell somebody. Never tell anybody. You keep it to yourself.
Pro inmate tip. Pro convicted criminal tip.
Post criminal tip.
American Airlines is using a CT scanner to screen luggage at New York's JFK. We have entered the dystopia.
Yeah.
Your luggage can get better medical care than uninsured Americans.
Now, CT scanners, what do you think they cost? $250,000?
Yeah, they're really expensive.
Real expensive.
And they're expensive to operate too because you need all that liquid helium.
Yeah, so these things are going to be running around the clock, you imagine.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's just Homeland Security money that's going into that.
I really don't want the TSA to be in charge of the superconductors that are inside that.
So the idea here is because they can do a full 360 view of your luggage and rotate it in the software, then they don't have to search it as often. So they're pitching this as, if you don't like us going through your stuff, then we'll just pop it through the CT scanner, which is, they're searching it in a different way, I suppose.
If we can afford to do this with luggage, a CT scan at your local hospital should not be more than $100.
You think, how long until there's a guy with no insurance who just dives in there?
Yeah. It's like there's a guy that's gonna climb inside a suitcase and his friend is gonna ship him so he can get a free CT scan.
So you dive in and then you freedom of information, the records, and take that to your doctor. That's what you do.
We are living in the worst timeline.
Pro homeless tip.
If you need a free CT scan, just go to the airport.
Of course, you're going to get arrested by the TSA and probably go to Gitmo for that.
Probably long before you can check in your luggage.
Yeah. Well, Georgia Tech. So once Barb has struck again.
She clicked on something she shouldn't have. And now all those poor students have lost their data.
Worse than that, she attached a file she shouldn't have. She attached a spreadsheet that had the GPA, financial info, home address, and
student ID.
Yeah, student ID of 8,000 Georgia Tech students.
You would think that IT would have trained her on not sending that kind of information through email.
I don't know if she thought she was attaching it, or maybe it was a drag and drop failure, but Barb's been let go. Now, in Georgia, it is a felony to release that kind of information.
Oh, wow.
So we're not sure.
That might be bringing her up on charges.
Not sure exactly what's going to be. I mean, clearly I think it was a mistake, but there's that whole, intent doesn't enter into the law, right?
If she is... now, an interesting situation is probably going to play out. She'll be brought up on charges if it really is actually entirely her fault, but it will quietly go away if she had an overbearing boss that was like, I don't care, send me the information immediately, because they want to bring up the boss on charges.
They're purging those emails right now. So, yeah, she's going to burn alone for this one. Poor Barb. She just wants to play Bejeweled, man. She just loves it.
Well, police are seeking more digital evidence from tech companies. So this is getting really scary because a lot of these requests that are going to companies like Google and Facebook and that kind of thing are clearly just phishing from even local law enforcement. And that's going to create a mess for citizens.
Yeah. And there's not a lot of new information in this story, but it does bring up some hard numbers about how 130,000 requests from 6 companies. I think that's in 2018 so far. Or maybe that was in 2017, but they're going to that well way more often. That chart is pretty much just like a 45-degree angle at this point. And they interviewed law enforcement on here, and the law enforcement was actually complaining that it was too difficult to query this data.
Imagine situations like, let's say that your local city hall is doing something kind of shady, like they're, I don't know, just imagine something shady. And there's a protest outside City Hall, but then some kids come and throw eggs at City Hall. So then they request location data from Facebook and cell phone companies and things like that for everybody that was at the protest. And it's like, that seems like that doesn't meet the standard for that type of request. But exactly like what we're always talking about with the slippery slope, there it sits.
And not only are they going to do that, the next protest, they're rolling into Stingray. It's just like preemptively.
Yeah.
Let's just go scoop all this up.
It's like, I see you were at the City Hall protest. And it's like, I was at the coffee shop across from the City Hall protest. I saw people protesting, but I wasn't a part of the protest.
I was in the DMV part of it, renewing my license. And I just beat you.
Mercilessly.
Oh, Samsung and the Internet of Things. What could go wrong?
The bugs in the Samsung Internet of Things hub leave smart home open to attack. So, like, I think, normally I'm bitching about the sensationalist headlines. The Samsung IoT hub might as well be an open door for anybody to mine cryptocurrency on literally anything connected to your local network. It's bad. It's real bad.
Now, the article, it is, when you read the whole article, to do whatever they want with your IoT through Samsung, it is a long series of steps. But if you were a juicy enough target, think about like a hot young starlet, a Hollywood, like Scarlett Johansson. How far would somebody go to get into her Internet of Things?
And you can't get them out once they're in there.
Oh, yeah.
They're embedded like a tick.
No amount of shampooing. So that story is, I think they've patched a lot of it. But again, the problem with Internet of Things, how often do you upgrade the firmware on your refrigerator?
The problem that we, like, just so you guys understand, the fundamental problem with Internet of Things is that they are not designed with security in mind first. Anything that is going to be an appliance in your house connected to the internet, the first concern should be security. And we're not there yet. Nobody's taking it that seriously. And until we do, a baby monitor, and what was it? A baby monitor in Minnesota is gonna DDoS your heating system in Alaska.
It was in the Ukraine.
Yeah.
They turned off that apartment building.
So yeah, until security, Internet of Things devices are designed with security in mind first, meaning that everything is public key encryption. Like, it won't talk to you until it's cryptographically paired with something else. Until we have that, this is always going to be just a disaster.
But the other problem there is, let's talk about your refrigerator. There's planned obsolescence in the refrigerators. So the refrigerator you're going to buy now, 10 years from now, they're not sending out patches.
No.
And it's still Internet of Things. So
remember when fridges used to last like 30 years?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if you know a little bit about refrigerator repair and you keep it running,
there's not that much to them, yeah.
It's not going to run longer when it's mining, cryptocurrency. That's just, why is everything in here warm? Oh, we've got another Krebs story, and this one's weird.
China, somebody in China, or maybe several somebodies in China, mailed CDs and some sort of weird letter to a bunch of different lawmakers. It's like, here, insert this CD, but it's got tons of malware on it. Like, it's Typhoid Mary. It's bad.
And it's not even labeled. Like, they didn't even bother to print a label. It's just a CDR. And this is just nonsense. It's like English nonsense. So I suppose the hope here was that someone was just curious.
And put it in their government computer.
And, Barb, now if they would have labeled it Bejeweled 3.
That's where they messed up. Let's see, what is that? A pro international spy tip?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm sure that some people read that story and they were like, oh, I could do that so much better. I can think of like 5 ways to improve it, and I'm not even into that kind of thing. Now, this story is, I'm thinking meth is probably involved here.
I would say so. Some sort of mind-altering substance for sure. A teen was arrested after he allegedly broke into a couple's home and asked them for the Wi-Fi password.
He actually allegedly said, so it was an older couple. He cut a they had their windows open, but they had screens. He cut the screen, crawled in, walked into their bedroom, and as they woke up, he said, "What's your Wi-Fi password? I'm at my data cap."
That claps can't claim another victim.
You think like Verizon could be sued for this?
I want to hold Ajit Pai responsible.
But anyway, apparently his reign of terror continued as he went to another house and stole a bicycle. And as they confronted him, like the bicycle was in the back, so he was in the process of stealing it. They confronted him on the front porch and said, "Hey, that's our bicycle." And he said, "What's your Wi-Fi password?" before riding off on the bicycle.
Yeah, I think maybe there might have been some mind-altering substance at work there.
Yeah, so watch out for teens who, they got to get that Instagram fix, right?
At least 2 malls are using facial recognition technology to track shoppers' ages and genders without telling them. I got some bad news for you. Malls have been doing that for quite a while. They've even been a lot of malls, like the Mall of America, have devices for tracking the beacons that your phone emits on both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and they track customer movement and will tell you how many people are in what store, just based on passive mobile phone surveillance.
So it was this kiosk right here that was tracking you. So while this helps you navigate the mall, and these are larger malls, I imagine. So as you're using it, it's using facial recognition to determine your age and gender. It's gendering you, which will trigger a lot of people. And it's using that information to sort of build a profile. Now, there's some this is Canada. So there's some kind of rule in Canada where you can like request what information they have about you. And the guy they confronted, he was like, "Well, just write us a letter and we'll send you your information." Who's going to do that? The reason we know about this is they left the diagnostic screen up after doing some work on it. And somebody took a picture.
Yeah, this has been going on for about 10 years, at least here in America. So no one cares.
Well, getting into some gaming news, last week we talked about, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but the new Xbox. They were talking about gaming from the cloud. And we had a healthy debate about, is there any way that's going to be possible? Well, we've got more information about it now with
xCloud.
They did, one of the interesting things about this is they did talk about it's not total streaming, right? So even there are going to be 2 versions. There's going to be like the regular powerful Xbox version, and there's going to be the thin client version. But even the thin client is going to do things like hit detection on the console.
That makes sense. So this is kind of what we thought that it would be. It's not what the services in the past have been, which is the game runs remotely and streams to you, which the latency for that is crazy. The game kind of will run remotely, but stream stuff to be computed on the thin client, which is where we are now computationally with devices. Like you can have a Snapdragon processor that can totally render a 720p stream, so you can sort of composite the 2 things together, and you can have a reasonable gaming experience.
But now here's the question. What kind of playground is that going to be for Chinese hackers? If I'm doing hit detection locally and I get to send that back to the cloud?
There's going to be a lot of people that are like China number 1 in that.
They will be number 1 for some time.
Nintendo is also starting to play dirty. They've sent the lawyers after some ROM sites.
I recently bought myself a Nintendo Switch, and let's say theoretically that I modded it. And let's say theoretically I put one of those homebrew NES emulators on it, and I wanted some ROMs. And let's say that theoretical me was pretty surprised how easy those are to just download straight from the web.
It turns out those are so easy to download from the web that the NES Classic, there is good evidence to suggest that the NES Classic, a lot of the ROMs in it just came from the internet. Nintendo didn't even bother going back to the Gold Masters to get it. They were just like, we'll just download this off the internet.
They proved that with the Super Mario one because it still had the ID from the guy who dumped it. Well, what they're saying is, not only that, but now you got those Java-based sites where you can just play them in the browser. Well, Nintendo's saying that each copyright, not every site, but each ROM is going to be $150,000 fine. That's what they're going to sue for.
These two sites that Nintendo cease and desisted, they're gone immediately. Well, they may have just done more. We don't know yet, but at least two sites just shut down immediately.
There are a lot of them, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nintendo getting serious. Nintendo, they overprice. If you look at that, they did that virtual console for the last generation. Was that the Wii? What was the last one? Was that the Wii U?
Before the Switch, I think so.
And they wanted like $7 for those games.
Oh yeah,
which is crazy.
Yeah, I'm not going to rebuy that.
No, and that didn't follow. Like if you got Virtual Console on the previous one, it didn't follow your account.
Well, I did rebuy Final Fantasy IV because they remastered the graphics, and that was a lot of fun.
Well, I could see that. That's a different game, though. I mean, that's not going to be on the ROM side,
right? Yeah.
So, yeah, if you're looking to, if you love ROMs, Nintendo ROMs, maybe time to go ahead and get yourself a master list and store it offline. Keep that for posterity.
Now, when I say the words vomit fraud, what do you think? What do you think of when I say vomit fraud? And vomit fraud is a problem.
I didn't immediately know what this was. I didn't understand it. I had to read, but it makes sense.
Uber's the headline is Uber can't keep down accusations of vomit fraud against its drivers. So, picture the scene. I mean, we've all seen this in a million different movies. It's like you're out on the night with friends or whatever, drinking. This is all foreign to me. I can't imagine. None of this is things that are in my life at all.
But see, one of the main reasons that you call an Uber, if you're being responsible, that you're drunk.
And so if you puke in the car, apparently there's a thing in the Uber software for that. So what's happening is drivers...
It's a fee.
Yeah, drivers have fake vomit and make it look like somebody vomited in their car, and then the passengers are charged an extra cleanup fee for the driver having to deal with the vomit, which is a good thing if you actually legit vomit in your Uber driver.
Right.
But they're not vomiting.
That fee could be up to $150.
Wow.
So you do like a $20 Uber ride, and then you wake up the next day and you've got, that $170 on your charge.
It's like, I don't remember doing that, but I was blackout drunk. I guess that's a problem some people have.
So a lot of riders are, you can dispute the thing, you can do everything through the app. And so Uber is not able to figure out when the vomit is real. And how do you prove it? How do you prove vomit?
Some of that fake vomit is really convincing.
But not only that, you could take a picture, like just wait till somebody vomits, take a picture, and take like 5 different angles and just keep using it.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Or your dog might vomit. I'm
going to get somebody else to pay for this. Are people out there that terrible?
I'm sure you could. I bet you could hire a homeless person to vomit in your car for like $5. Pro criminal tip.
They used to make this spray-on plastic stuff that was amazing. Like you could spray it on, and it would go on kind of thick, and then you could peel it off. And so maybe you could do that with like some transparent stuff. So you could coat your car in that, and then vomit, and then you could just peel it, and it would be its own plastic bag.
That's probably expensive though.
It doesn't work with every material either. Like if your carpet's fuzzy, I don't imagine it would work with that. But it worked really well with things like like a waxed vehicle.
I would think that you could, like airplanes, you could just give your riders vomit receptacles.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That'd be cheap. I mean, there's no guarantee they're going to use them, I guess.
Get an air sickness bag. It's like, that's the ultimate Uber driver taking their job very seriously. It's like, here's your air sickness bag.
Well, let's say that you are legitimately, you do vomit in your Uber, right? It's embarrassing. You pay your $150, but at least no one's going to know, right? At least that secret is just between you and your Uber driver.
What if your Uber driver is a Twitch streamer, though? That's what our next story is about.
And so here we got a screenshot from this guy's Twitch stream. So these people, like this is the guy, and these people don't know that they're on Twitch. They have no idea.
I think the more disturbing thing about this is that this guy would talk about the people as he was picking them up and after he dropped them off.
He would rate the beauty of the females. So kind of creepy. And the Twitch chat, of course, would also rate the beauty of the females. And they did talk about how he would sort of lead them in conversation to try and make things more interesting for the stream.
Of course, this is not illegal, but it violates tons and tons and tons of customer, like your Uber agreement and your Twitch agreement. And
he's been excused from both Uber and Twitch. But this state is a one-party state, so it was not illegal what he was doing. So be careful when you're in these cars, because I don't think anybody will make this mistake again, probably. But the number of people recording is probably higher than we would ever imagine. And maybe just to prove that you're vomiting, you know?
You never know when you're going to have to prove that somebody vomited in your car.
But the other thing they bring up, and this is maybe worse, he could, like, you know, like an OBS thing where he had 2 cameras. So he could switch to the driving camera. And that, if you're crazy, like, let's say, and, you know, we know about Twitch people. If, oh, hey, I live in this city. Oh, that girl's pretty. Oh, you're showing me a recorded route to her home?
I haven't had to deal with that in person at all. So I can imagine for a pretty girl, it would be way, way worse.
Well, on the topic of really, really stupid things that people do in cars, we have the hashtag #InMyFeelings challenge. Now, in my day, this was just called ghostwriting. Apparently, they've changed the name of it.
The National Traffic Safety Board wants you to stop jumping out of moving cars for Drake's "In My Feelings" challenge. So, the only thing that I can think of when I was reading the story is, so we get the Tide Pods in the martini glass on the desk here. And that we feel like that joke has pretty much run its course. But how can we capture this meme on our desk?
We could build a PC next to a running car. Yeah,
That doesn't seem dangerous at all.
This is people, you know, if you don't know what this is, you haven't seen it. I don't
Watch
know
the video.
How have you missed it? But
there's no description that we can give you. That you got to watch the video.
I don't know if the video will play.
People literally hop out of their car and run alongside it and then hop back in their car, which ends as disastrously as you might imagine more often than not.
Yeah, most of the time, people don't comprehend that they're moving at a different speed than the ground. And so they immediately just fall and their vehicle continues on with no driver. So
what a great idea.
Unfortunately, this affects us all. And you watch the video, it's like, oh, that's funny, that idiot. But then what's in front of that car? You know?
An 8-year-old kid.
Here we go. Oh, physics. Here it comes. Oh, an object in motion. Oh. These are hilarious. But don't do that.
Don't do that.
For the love of God. Don't do that.
How do you know not to not do that? I mean, like, is it not obvious?
It seems obvious. I don't know what.
I'm scared to death of moving cars.
What grade in school should that be taught?
Like first kindergarten?
Well, Google has a bit of an embarrassing autocomplete.
When you type "sit on" on Android phones, my face is the first thing that pops up, and I think that's great. It's Monty Python. There's a Monty Python song about that.
Oh yeah,
which is great, and everybody should go find the Monty Python song for that.
It does show you that that's what people are mostly using that phrase for.
Yeah.
That kind of makes sense. That's an invitation I imagine gets sent out a lot. The guy that is complaining about this, that brought it to everyone's attention, to BuzzFeed, he was actually texting his babysitter. Can you sit on? And there was going to be a date, but Google filled in my face.
Nice. Now, the problem I have with this is that first they came for like the autocomplete terrorist language and like the really terrible, like disgusting stuff, and now they're quote unquote fixing autocomplete for innocent stuff like this. I mean, come on.
We got to come up with a new slang for that. Mercury News isn't loaded. Oh, there we go. So, did we cover this story? I think I left it out because it wasn't that interesting. But
the Mercury News, I don't like this one. I didn't really. It's a bot that's going to rat you out.
Well, Venmo is a payment system.
Oh, okay.
And the scandal was Venmo by default puts all your payments in public mode.
Interesting.
And anybody with a Venmo key can query that entire database. So this guy wrote a little Python app, and he is just querying for words like drugs or sex or whatever. And he created a Twitter bot that just tweeted every time we found something interesting.
When I've bought something from friends or paid back money borrowed from friends or something, I've definitely written really hilarious things in the memo line on the check that had nothing to do. Like, it's like, this is to Bob, it's a memo for sexual favors.
Hiding that body.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. So people were up in arms, but this guy was just pointing out how crazy it is that Venmo automatically puts your transactions into public mode. Now, you can go in and opt out of that, but why would that be the default is the question. So
BBC News has the story of the decade right here. 7 o'clock is the peak time for pizza.
And we should say that this is online orders of pizza. So this is 7 o'clock is the most popular. Second most popular, 2 a.m.
That makes sense.
So you want dinner, and then you want like a drunken feast when you come home.
It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I am too tired to cook for myself. Damn it, I want a pizza.
And this is pretty much universal. So this is not just in, this is BBC, but this is not just in the UK. This is in, most of the Western world. Any place where you can get online pizza delivery, this was true. Local time 7 o'clock and local time 2 a.m. is when people want pizza. And when they, like in India, they adjusted it for like curry delivery. It wasn't always pizza.
But it's still 7 and midnight. That's impressive.
2 a.m.
Or 7 and 2, yeah.
Yeah. Universal. Now, this story, I'll have to admit, and Wendell questioned me before the news. It was like, what does this have to do with technology? And the answer is nothing. But look at this.
It's really funny.
Look at this guy. That's what they're selling as a zebra. It's almost like he knows. It's like, no one's going to buy this.
They painted a donkey to look like a zebra.
And they did it so poorly.
And so this is making the rounds in social media and everything else. So I guess we can give it a pass.
But apparently there was only one live. I think this one back here is just fake. I would look at him. Man, I would love to go see the painted donkey. That's great.
Poor guy.
That's when we use the phrase dog and pony show, you think about like this is kind of the origination of that. Like you could go to the zoo, right? But that's expensive because they have exotic animals there. But you could just go to the dog and pony show because dogs and ponies aren't fancy. It's like
it's not even a pony.
It's just a terrible show. It's just a bunch of dogs.
It's the Egyptians have embraced the philosophy of P.T. Barnum.
They defended the painted donkey. They said that is 100% a zebra when they were questioned. So. And
anybody that says otherwise it's fake news. We learned that last week, right? Because the Egyptians are very serious about going after.
Secret police are going to come take you to a re-education camp where you will admit that is a zebra.
Perhaps even more absurd than that, we're getting a first contact or false alarm thing. We're getting the Richter scale earthquake thing. We're getting that for contact from an alien civilization. So we can. It's like how important is this event that scientists are reporting? Is this confirmation of extraterrestrial life or no?
You would think that 5 would be confirmation, right?
Yeah.
So there is no reading above like a 1.
Well, do we need this? It seems like we could just...
yeah. If it happens, I feel like it's going to make the news.
Yeah.
I think we'll be able to... I think it will be analyzed very thoroughly should we ever contact aliens. A lot of people are going to be interested in that.
There's, I forget who, it's like Arthur C. Clarke or somebody, but there's only 2 possibilities. Either we are alone in the universe or we're not. And both are terrifying.
Yeah, and these guys have sent this off to SETI. They want this to be codified as official whatever. But, I don't know. I suppose if you're deep in the UFO type stuff, you like this as a way to rate your theory or whatever, right? Like
nobody has time to deal with us. We're one of the backwater outer rim solar systems.
Yeah, well, let's here's a blurry photo. I think it's a 3, right? Does everybody agree this is a 3? Yeah.
How crazy would it be, though, if we got direct observation? It's like there is some, galaxy spanning civilization that's a little bit closer toward the galactic center, and it's like we're watching their fleet or whatever, and they just go consume a star, and it's like, oh, that's not terrifying at all.
You just hope that their FTL is slow enough that you'll be dead before they get here.
What a thing to hope for.
But that would be, I think the true terror there would be the hysteria.
Yeah, there would definitely be hysteria.
Because some people would just go crazy.
Yeah. The confirmation either way, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think confirmation of no, people just wouldn't buy. But if you had incontrovertible evidence that they're out there, and
people would just lose their mind.
They're like a million years ahead of us. Some people are going to be like, well, it's over. Might as well start stabbing.
Let's hope that they have a species protection list, like, it's like, we're the white rhino of the outer rim or whatever.
Do you want to go to the space zoo?
There's lots of episodes of Star Trek about that. The menagerie. It's like, yeah. All right, that's it. That's it for the news for this week. Be sure to check out our other content.
And we'll see you next week.